Ave Maris Stella.
Hello and welcome back to Vatican II in a Year. This is your host, Father Matthew Schneider. I am a priest of the Elite Church of Christ and I teach theology. This is a podcast on the Star Christ Production Network at sqpn.com. Today we are on day 318 and we're covering Gaudium et Spes 35 to 36 on human activity begins and ends with man. If you want to follow along, we have a reading plan and more details at sqpn.com/Vatican, at frmatthewlc.com/Vatican. Yesterday, we spoke about how man has increasing power over creation, which is in accord with God's plan, and gives us more responsibility, because we have responsibility on what we have dominion over. Today, we are continuing chapter 3, man's activity throughout the world, and we're going to talk about the human activity changes us, and sciences have a proper level of autonomy. Those two topics are basically 35 and 36. They're put together for space, but they aren't really thematically linked that much today. Sometimes the following paragraphs are very close thematically. Sometimes they just happen to be beside each other. Today, we're dealing with that latter one, where they just happen to be beside each other. So, paragraph 35 has two subparagraphs. We'll read them together. The summary is human activity not only changes the world, but changes us. And it talks about this. We'll get into it. Let's begin. A, human activity, to be sure, takes its significance from its relationship to man. Just as it proceeds from man, so is ordered toward man. For when a man works, he not only alters things in society, he develops himself as well. He learns much. He cultivates his resources. He goes outside of himself and beyond himself. Rightly understood, this kind of growth is of great value, that any external riches which can be garnered, a man is more precious for what he is than for what he has. Similarly, all men do to obtain greater justice, wider brotherhood, a more humane disposition of all social relationships has greater worth than technological advances. For these advances can supply the material for human progress, but of themselves alone they can never actually bring it about. B. Hence the norm of human activity is this, that in accord with the divine plan and will, it harmonizes with the genuine good of the human race, and that it allow men as individuals and as members of society to pursue their total vocation and fulfill it. This paragraph, or these two subparagraphs, however you want to say it, they are talking about what in social doctrine we call the subjective dimension of work. This seems a little confusing. Well, objective dimension is what I do, what I accomplish, right? So I built a table. The tools and the table are the objective thing, what is done. But the subjective is me as the builder, the one who built it, and how that changes me. And it wants to point out this is very valuable, that working itself is good for us. It perfects us. It makes us better. We have that dominion for that sake. We talked about dominion yesterday. And this is important. So I think this is even more important today than it was in the 1960s. Today, there are predictions that we will reach a society with no scarcity, where everyone will be provided what they need without even working. Absolutely, and there won't be a need for work. This has been proposed for decades, but it might actually be coming close to being true. The question then is, what value is there to work? And I think there is the subjective value of what we do, how we transform it. And that's a valuable aspect, that we do that. This paragraph also notes the social dimension of work, that work has that social dimension. We help others, we bring them along, we teach them about Jesus, we have that relationship, and we work for the sake of others. I don't just work so that I work so that others get benefit. For example, I wrote an article back in September for a magazine about how we can accommodate autistics, and it was published recently, and that's a good thing. That helps others. And I did that work, not just think through it myself. I'd already thought through it myself, but I said, hey, I want others to understand this, so I wrote something. Now let's move on to paragraph 36. It has 3 subparagraphs, with B being by far the largest, more than half of the paragraph. We're going to read them A and B together. Science and arts have a proper but not absolute autonomy. And then C, all depends on God, and he explains us to ourselves. Let's begin with 36A. So 36A. Now, many of our contemporaries seem to fear that a closer bond behind human activity and religion will work against the independence of man, of societies, and of the sciences. B, if by the autonomy of earthly affairs, we mean the created things and societies themselves enjoy their own laws and values, which must be gradually deciphered, put to use, and regulated by man, then it is entirely right to demand that autonomy. Such is not merely required by modern man, but harmonized also to the will of the Creator. For by the very beginning of their having been created, all things are endowed with their own stability, truth, goodness, proper laws, and order. Man must respect these as he isolates them by the appropriate methods of the individual sciences or arts. Therefore, if methodical investigation within every branch of learning is carried out in a genuine scientific manner and in accord with moral norms, it never truly conflicts with the faith. For earthly matters and the concerns of faith derive from the same God. Indeed, whoever labors to penetrate the secrets of reality with a humble and steady mind, even though he is unaware of the fact, is nevertheless being led by the hand of God, who holds out all things in existence and gives them their identity. Consequently, we cannot but deplore certain habits of mind which are sometimes found among Christians, which do not sufficiently attend to the rightful independence of science, and which, from the argument of controversy they spark, lead many minds to conclude that faith and science are mutually opposed. I apologize, I almost slipped up there. When I first read through it, pre-reading, I thought it was methodical, but it was actually, I thought it was methodological, but it was actually methodical. So I got those mixed up and I had to switch mid-word. That might have sounded a little awkward. One of the things that's important here is it talks about how people are challenged by religion and science being together. This is a real challenge for a lot of religions historically because those religions hold certain views that would put certain kinds of restrictions on science. Christianity is very different in the sense that we believe that there is a created world that's not God and that God rationally created it. That means there are laws in this world, in these rational laws God used, which we can discover, which can help us understand God. And that's important. So that's where we have this first aspect of, that aspect where the faith is there. And it rightly notes at the end that this is not a Catholic attitude that science is all bad and everything. And then most of these 2 subparagraphs are about how there's a proper autonomy for science. Science is not going to declare which cancer treatment is better for this type of cancer or whether Rust or Python, 2 programming languages, should be used for this programming thing. And different sciences work on different principles. I studied 2 years of electrical engineering. I can tell you a lot of the principles of electricity. I don't remember them well enough that I would trust myself to do them without looking up every single thing I did, because that was 25 years ago, but that I did do that. And so this is important to realize. Now, this autonomy, on the other hand, is not absolute. There are limitations to that autonomy. We can't just say, oh, do whatever you want. Well, this form of cancer treatment, we have to use death row inmates to get it or something. Or we have to use babies from abortion. Like, we have to use one whole baby for each cancer treatment. That's a real problem. Or, for example, this biotech thing, we're making this monster. Or as we get now with AI, we're making super intelligent AI without making 100% sure we've actually made sure it's not going to try and destroy humanity or something. They still need ethics, and that's where the church can often be very helpful. Finally, these 2 subparagraphs note that God helps all to the truth, even if they don't recognize it. That's important. We know God is leading everyone to the truth, Not everyone is going to recognize it as God is doing so, but that's the reality. Now let's conclude with the brief 36C, which is about all depending on God and he explaining us to ourselves. Let's read it. C. But if the expression, the independence of temporal affairs, is taken to mean that created things do not depend on God, and that man can use them without any reference to the Creator, anyone who acknowledges God will see how false such a meaning is. For without the Creator, the creature would disappear. For their part, however, all believers of whatever religion always hear his revealing voice in the discourse of creatures. When God is forgotten, however, the creature itself grows unintelligible. Everything in creation depends on God. God has put us there, and we all depend on God in the sense that he stops thinking about us. For even a split second, we cease to exist. And that is the reality. All of creation is that dependent on God. Even the dumb, Expo pen or other pen that I have on my desk. If God stops thinking about it for a split second, it disappears. And God is speaking to us in this world. He sometimes speaks through secondary means. That means you'll hear somebody else talk about something or rise something in your mind. And so you then are reminded of God's voice through that. That's good, right? I read a spiritual book and I'm reminded, it helps me pray better. That's a good thing. God speaking through secondary means. This concludes today's episode. Thank you for listening to this episode of Vatican II in a Year. This is a listener-supported podcast. You can donate to help StarQuest produce it and other great podcasts at sqpn.com/give. You can give one-time monthly or join the StarQuest Patreon. Tomorrow, we're going to continue with the next paragraph of Gaudium et Spes, which is paragraph 36 on Scripture and the human family. Please to understand to learn more about Vatican II, which will provide a blueprint for the Catholic Church. Go to sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican, or Vatican SQPN on Facebook and X. If you want more information on the podcast, like playlist of individual documents and a reading plan. There is also an SQPN Discord with a channel for Vatican II in a Year, and that's at sqpn.com/Discord, and then you need to navigate to the Vatican II in a Year channel. Amen.